Hi, everybody. We want to welcome you into Coronavirus Inside the Arizona Numbers. I'm Katie Raml. Alongside me here, Garrett Archer. I'm here at the studio today, as I always show, empty, quiet studio. Just still can't get used to it this many months in. Lots to talk about today. We're going to get to the numbers in just a minute. A couple of headlines to get to, which I know people are not going to be so excited about for anyone who's watching from Los Angeles right now. But Halloween, specifically trick-or-treating, has been canceled in Los Angeles. So we'll wait and see if other cities follow suit. A lot of people have their opinions on that. We'd love to hear them in the comments and love to know where you're watching from. Also in the comments, be sure to post any questions that you might have about data here in Arizona. We can help you find that information. We stare at these websites all day and we can help you maneuver it. Watching all the way from Hawaii. Welcome in, Leanne. Thank you. All right, Garrett, let's get to it. Let's start where we always do with some of these numbers.
Yep, let's just go right to the summary tab today. This is the first day that we would have reporting outside of the holiday weekend. So we had today about 500 new cases. I've got it shared and ready to go. 30 new deaths reported today. These are all, of course, not what happened in the last 24 hours. This happened over the last several days, 4 to 5 days. Only 2578 PCR tests reported. That comes out to some very high percent positives. 19.2% positive for the PCR tests. That is a little misleading, as typical. There's a lot of backfilling that happened today, and our PCR percent positive is still within the range what it should be, which is around that 3 to 4% right now. It is certainly not 20%, but you're going to see that reported some other places. But again, those are all backfills. Nothing to be concerned about for as far as the transmission, the true rate of growth of the virus.
When we're talking about backfill, are we talking about just filling in from the long holiday weekend or something that's
No, we're talking about 40% of these 500 cases are from August, from 3 to 4 weeks ago. So again, almost all of these are typically going to be duplicate. They're data that was probably brought in over the weekend using some surveillance screening or hospital data. And what's going to happen is over the next couple of days, a lot of them are going to be removed. They're going to be deduplicated. Like I said, there's a bunch of reasons why data can be brought in that has already been duplicated. So they're going to go through it and say, oh, we already have this case, and a lot of those will be removed. So that 20%, not worth looking at today, and it's certainly not a cause for concern at this very moment.
Yeah, Sarah writes, and thank you for all the comments coming in. Sarah writes, masks on now if you don't want Halloween canceled. Keep your buns at home. Exactly, Sarah. That's what a lot of people are saying. And masks with the costumes themselves. That's one of the other popular things we're going to see this year. So thank you for the comment on that, and more questions coming in. We're going to get to all your questions in just a minute. Garrett, I want to get to some of the numbers coming in from the counties, specifically because tomorrow we will, of course, have a Thursday, which is when things are recalculated for both businesses and for schools. Before we do that, can we look at Maricopa County on this summary map before we go?
Of course. And as you can see, Maricopa, as is typical, is the majority of the cases. 284 cases and 23 of the deaths came from Maricopa County. So that's a very typical number for Maricopa County.
Okay, so we wanted to touch on that really quick. Now, one of the best parts about being able to chat with you all on here is that we can get sort of a preview of what's going to happen tomorrow. So we've got, what do you want to start with first, businesses or schools, Garrett?
We'll start with businesses because the standards for businesses are not, I don't want to say more lax, but they're more standardized, and they're by county. So we're going to start with businesses. First thing we're going to remember is that where we are right now, most of the, I don't have my my county dashboard up and ready, but we already have, I'm sorry, go ahead, Katie.
I was just going to say, we'll let you pull it up as, take as much time as you need right there. I was just going to remind folks that basically we have 15 counties here in Arizona, but we've only had 2 counties that have been in that minimal category. So that's Greenlee and La Paz. They've been the only ones to be able to achieve that status. And then the substantial counties, Gila, Graham, and Yuma County, still in that substantial category. So the big question tomorrow, Garrett, as you know, is going to be, does anybody in the moderate category, which is every other county I didn't mention there, is anybody in the moderate category going to be in a place that can move to minimal? And are any of the 3 counties, Gila, Graham, and Yuma, finally going to move out of that substantial category?
So the answers to that are, for the first question, is no. There are no counties that are currently in moderate that have a chance of moving to minimal tomorrow. The per capita rates for these counties, some of them are getting close to 10, but they're still well above 10. So we're looking at a situation where it's going to be at least another 2 weeks from this Thursday before any other county might join Gila and La Paz in the moderate category. But we do have some good news as far as the other counties go that are in substantial. 2 of those counties will very most likely be joining the moderate category tomorrow, and that will be Yuma and Gila should be in the moderate category. And that would basically leave us with Graham County as the last remaining substantial county, and that's because the percent positives are so high. Their per capita rate's actually okay. It's very good, but they've just had some very high percent positives over there. So those 2 counties they should be, and I've got it shared just to show you what I'm looking at. When you look at Yuma County here, you can see, and again, this is, I'm going to go back up here really a minute. This is Yuma. You can see that already Yuma makes the COVID-like indicator. It already makes the percent positive, and it's just shy on the per capita. It was at 124. That's what was keeping it a substantial. Well, it's very simple to recalculate that. I've already done it for August 23rd, the week of August 23rd. And that number for Yuma comes out to 70.8, which is well under 100, closer to where this is, of course, this 73. It's actually gone down. So tomorrow, Yuma will be put into the moderate category. And I've already checked their percent positive as well, and their percent positive is still within the range. It
stays low. Yeah, I know a lot of people waiting for that there. So what that in essence means, just for a recap for those of you in Yuma County or in Gila County, it means that if you move to the moderate category, gyms would be able to open to 25% occupancy. And that is, of course, when they follow the mitigation requirements that have been put forth by the state, things like wearing a mask or having staff get their temperature checked. And then movie theaters, water parks, tubing, bars and nightclubs that provide dine-in service, they could all open to 50% capacity. Remember, across the state, bars and nightclubs not providing that dine-in service are still closed. If you're in the moderate category, Greenlee and La Paz are the only ones that were in the minimal category, but they'd even have to get to less than 3% positivity rates to be able to even open at 50%. And this is something that, Garrett, has been challenged in the courts as well. I know that dozens of Arizona bar owners lost their legal fight. We reported on that last night. They were going to court, trying to push to reopen, and a Maricopa County judge chose to uphold the governor's closure of bars that don't serve food, saying that these businesses really have failed to show that Ducey's orders actually violate the Arizona Constitution. So wanted to update you on that piece of information as well. Okay, so let's look at how these schools look. I believe we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 counties that still had not met the benchmarks as of last week. These are just suggestions. Schools have been making their own choices, but the state benchmarks that have been put forward, we had 5 counties: Gila, Graham, Mojave, Santa Cruz, and Yuma still out there waiting. Anybody getting close?
Let's do some checking. So let's look at Gila again. Gila, we were too far above on our our per capitas going down. We do have one. They should make this as far as the declining cases tomorrow. So even though Gila looks like it's still, I kind of misspoke a little bit. Looks like Gila might still be on the cusp for getting moderate for the businesses tomorrow. In regards to this metric, as far as two weeks of cases going down, they will make this. So this will become a check mark. Although it looks like they're going to be, for 2 consecutive weeks, they're still going to be a little bit off of this. So they're not quite going to be put into the moderate yet. Yuma County will likely be put into moderate tomorrow based on the percent positive.
Okay. So
and what were the others? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I was just going to mention that all of this information officially comes out tomorrow morning, and we'll, of course, update you on that. But we wanted to get all of you with a little preview of how things look.
Yeah, and again, it does look like, say, like Mojave, they still don't meet this second benchmark, and since it went up slightly, it looks like it's going to be another couple of weeks for them. So there, a couple of these are just not going to make that 7% for a little bit, and that has a lot to do with we did see in the last week or so, we saw some Department of Correction testing that happened in places like Mojave and Yuma and Pinal, and that really did sort of askew their numbers a little bit. We're sort of seeing the consequences of that in these numbers, where we're seeing them, some slight increases from August 16th to August 23rd. Those weeks are a lot of this based on this testing that happened with the Department of Corrections over the last couple of weeks.
Okay. Let's see. Lori is asking, how long will you guys be able to do these updates? Let me find. For how long will you continue to do these updates through flu season? So, Lori, we actually do have an update about flu season and tracking these numbers. The state has just issued an executive order that they'll be releasing more of these numbers. So, Garrett, we expect and I need to be specific in that, the flu numbers, similar to what we've seen for COVID numbers. How do we expect that to work, Garrett, and what metrics would be released to us? Do we know, is it like who's using a hospital bed for a flu case versus a COVID case?
So I would presume that we would be seeing a lot of similarities between how
they track it. Yeah.
Tracking this COVID-19 as opposed to influenza. A lot of the influenza data that AZDHS uses has a lot to do with that surveillance system for the influenza-like illness. That's sort of how it really goes with this. I'm trying to pull it up as I'm talking. But I presume that a lot of this is going to be, they're basically going to be taking this system that they've already configured for COVID-19 and just basically mirroring this system and using it for influenza in the same way. So, and of course, it's the same type of situation with COVID-19 where, we're going to have documented cases of influenza, but as we all know, the vast majority of influenza cases do not go documented. People just get the flu and get better. So, we're going to have numbers. They'll be sort of, you'll be able to compare them, but obviously there's going to have to be some caveats to that, just based on how large influenza is in terms of other things. So, but we will be seeing the documented cases that are from the hospitalizations, are from sort of the worst case influenza scenarios, and we will use those sort of as a comparative tool and as a combination tool with the hospitalizations we have right now with COVID-19, combined with the census data to sort of put that together and, do some tracking with that.
Yeah. See how things look. Okay, lots of good questions coming in. I want to get to a few more. Mildred was asking about Scottsdale. How are the cases in Scottsdale? I do want to address that because Scottsdale's having a board meeting for their school district tonight. They put out a survey to parents to find out how things look. So let's kind of get an update on those numbers if possible.
Yeah, we'll go back over to the district maps really quick.
Yeah.
That's the best way to look at this. Now, the one thing to remember is we cannot, just because of this is jurisdictions, we don't have information from outside of the counties. We can't make we can just sort of look at these and say, well, it looks like this is going to be 7%. It's probably going to be 7%, but we have no idea. There's no way to predict these at all. So when we go to Scottsdale here, we can see that right now, their cases per 100K in the most recent week was 24, so about 25 people per 100K or 25 cases per 100K. And the percent positivity was well below 5% at 3.54. And you can see they've been holding that percent positivity for 2 weeks now. So it does appear that there's a really good chance by tomorrow, if they're already on a hybrid with on-site learning support. And it looks like they're probably going to remain there because at 24, it's sort of unlikely to see that move to 10 anytime soon, but they're not going to move up into a different category quite yet.
Yeah. And those specifically for that school district, they're still on at-home learning, which has been part of the frustration for the parents who are feeling like they should be able to move in hybrid. One of the tough things has been calling back all the educators. I mean, just think of if you're a mom or a dad and you have your own kids at home and you're getting called back into the classroom the second it dips below a number, it's hardly any time to get things ready in your own personal life, let alone for a whole school district. Let's see. Laura's asking, Dignity Health is opening up a lab in North Scottsdale that will be able to test 10,000 a day. Do you expect the numbers to go up? Garrett, we wouldn't necessarily expect them to go up. It's just a bigger testing opportunity because we're not at this point short on tests.
Yeah, I really don't expect them to. I mean, I don't expect them to go up too much simply because we've had capacity to do probably 40,000 tests right now for the past 3 or 4 weeks. And we haven't really seen any spikes except for when ASU was testing its incoming students. So I don't really think that just opening a lab in North Scottsdale, especially North Scottsdale, because there's just not that many, it's not that high of a transmission area, that we're going to see a spike in case just because of that.
Yeah. So just to add to that, what Laura was asking, we had about 3,000 results that were logged overnight. So there just isn't the need for it per se at this point. All right.
Yeah, I see some comments about places like Pinal County and Apache Junction, and we just don't have those at this granularity. So I do apologize, but Maricopa County is the only county in Arizona to give us this information by zip code, school districts, and cities.
Yeah. It's great that we have this for Maricopa County, so we're grateful for it. We just wish we had those numbers to provide for everybody. Let's see, a few more questions coming in. Oh, Stephen was asking about Dr. Crow. So Michael Crow had a update. I guess it was just specifically for the media. He met with students last week, but to sort of clarify the things that we've kind of pushed on here. What numbers are we getting from ASU? What numbers are we now going to get from ASU that help us better understand the true scope of what they're experiencing there when it relates to coronavirus? You listened in today, right, Garrett?
I got about half of it. So I was still doing some data collection when it started. So I got to about half of it. So there might be some more information, but what I got from what I listened to is that they are going to start changing a little bit of the way that they do the reporting. They got a little pushback from the media and others that they weren't giving cumulative cases. They were just giving an active case count, which is very difficult to do any sort of analysis on or tracking at all when it's just active, because you don't know the difference between cases that are being brought into the system and cases that are phasing out of the system. Whereas at least if you have a cumulative and an active number, you can sort of get those numbers. So we're going to start reporting. My understanding is they'll start reporting a cumulative number. They will be doing an active case number, which I like. I like that they're going to do active case numbers, especially for places like ASU, where most of the cases are going to be, very asymptomatic. And they did make a point to say this on their press call, that the majority of the cases that are at ASU are either asymptomatic or extremely mild cases, which you would expect from that age group.
Yeah.
So what they won't be doing is they're not going to be giving us a percent positive for the clinical percent positive. And I understand why they're not doing that. It can be a somewhat misleading number unless you do what we're doing, where we look at it and take it day by day. If you're just doing, we did 3 tests, three testing days, and this is how many cases. Well, someone takes that and puts a daily percent positive, but that's not necessarily the case. But what they will be doing is they will be doing a positivity test that will be a random sample. It will be a true scientific random sample. So they're going to be putting that together, and they're going to give us the stats on that when it's ready.
Yeah, and that's fascinating too, because it's a little bit like what they're doing in Maricopa County. So
but this is for the diagnostic portion.
Yes.
So it's the other side of it. But yes, it's very similar to the seroprevalence. It's just at the PCR portion. We haven't done that yet. That even though it is presumed that the sample, or at least the population of COVID-19 out there, is a fairly random sample. So you can sort of look at it and say, okay, this is, if we could do some math on modeling on this and figure out how many people actually have COVID-19 that didn't go and get tested. But what they're doing is they're going to try to take that doubt out and say, no, we're actually going to do a scientific random sample of these diagnostic tests and see if we can come up with a model that's non-trivial, that would be giving us a good idea of what the spread and the rate is outside of just, taking these confirmed case numbers and trying to do something with them.
So, Garrett, how many people would they then have to test in a randomized sample to get something that's accurate? Are we talking like 200 people? Do we need to get to the threshold of 500 students being tested? I guess there's 2 ways to figure it, because you figure, are you looking at the total population of ASU to sort of predict that statistically, or are you looking only at those who are on campus, who are actually like living in the dorms? So I guess that number would be twofold to reflect that.
So medical statistics and surveying is a
Hmm.
slightly different beast than, say, your standard, polling
Hmm.
or anything else. That they sometimes like to get to 99% confidence, um,
Mm.
and they have to use other methods as well because obviously, if you just do a random evaluation, you may not. You need to basically because there's going to be people who there might have to sorry I'm trying to get my thoughts here. There might be a situation where you have a sample pool that does have to be tested and you have to actually consider that sample pool and then also a larger audience and you have to figure out a good random distribution to make sure that those people that must be tested are included as well and how to do that properly. So it's more complicated than standard polling.
Hmm.
But say if, for example, if it was to be standard polling, 95% confidence interval, all that stuff, you're looking at about 400 to 500 people.
Yeah, kind of what we're seeing in Maricopa County. Just fascinating how that works. Thank you for diving into that a little bit more. We just had a question a moment ago from Anita. I have to make a decision about whether to send my grandson back to school. They're both 65. They're worried about sending him. Is it safe? I wish that we could weigh in on whether it's safe. That's not our area of expertise at all. I've seen a couple other people weigh in and say, talk to your pediatrician. That's really good advice. And you can even do the pediatrician screenings over teleconference now, which is great too. So I would definitely check in with them and talk to them about your specific health concerns as well. And then somebody else say, oh, Margaret's saying, yeah, her daughter's thriving in virtual learning. So we've heard both sides, here. Some people saying that their kids are not doing well with virtual learning. My oldest loves it. I love that. Some of the things, Garrett, we've talked about, the computer learning models are showing up in school too, because when they're doing some of the learning on their computer, the computer knows whether they've mastered it or not. And we're asking a lot of a teacher to memorize that for 60 students or more if they have two classrooms or multiple classrooms. And it's fascinating because the computer can tell what my kid has learned and has not and can go back and help them study it. So in a way, there are things that make sense with all of this. Obviously, I still want her to have interactions and things like that, but it's not all terrible. And it's going to be interesting if some of that holds through to when we fully go back to school. So
Of course.
interesting ideas there. All right. Okay. So let's talk about the kids. How are things looking overall? Are we still at like about 13% of our cases are kids?
Yeah, we have actually seen ever since the ASU has started to die down as far as the number of cases.
Okay.
It's this weekend so far. We were sort of looking for today as being the drop dead date as far as are we going to see increases in cases, from the weekend, from Labor Day weekend. We still might see some different some increasing cases, but probably a little less so going out the gate from here on out, at least for the ASU round, because that really
Hmm.
started last week. And so since we're seeing declining cases, we're also seeing a decline in the sort of the rate of growth in the 18 or the under 20 age group. So why they still are at, let me just go to it really quick. They're likely still at 13%. They're still at 13% at about 26,000 total confirmed cases. But we're no longer really seeing that. Last week, we were seeing situations in which it was growing by 1.2%, where everyone else was growing by 0.2%. And we're not seeing that anymore. We're now seeing all the demos growing at the same rate again.
Okay, and something we'll continue to track for everybody. When we see hospitalization numbers, we've been seeing a pretty steady 10%. So 10% of people who are coming down with COVID are ending up in the hospital. Do we have metrics then for kids on that? Do we know how many kids end up hospitalized of that 25,
We
26,000?
do. We do have that. Let me see if
And
they have
and
it here.
and
Yes.
let's teach people where they can find that. Would that be on the county site
They do have it at Maricopa County site, but they do also have it on
for
the
AZDHS too?
AZHS. And now
Okay.
that they've caught up with these numbers, I trust them a little more. There was a time
Hmm.
they took them a long time to get caught up in the hospitalization graph, and they did some aggressive surveillance about 3 or 4 weeks ago to catch up. So now it's a much better graph. So
Hmm.
we're looking at this right here. I'm also pulling up a calculator because I'm really good with doing math in my head. Uh, and what we're looking at is about 3.6% of hospitalizations have come from the less than 20.
Say that again. 3 point what?
3.6% of hospitalizations have come from 20 or under.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
that's obviously better news.
Now, as far as we can go to, let me just move to Maricopa County, because they will also give us, and most of the other counties do this too, but Maricopa County has a great site, is they'll give us the ICU numbers, because obviously that shows you when, things have gotten really bad. And let me pull that up really quick. And we'll go to age groups, and we haven't been here in a couple. And here we go. You can see that it mirrors in Maricopa County. About 3% of hospitalized are coming from the 0 to 19, but less than 1% are ICU, and of course, very much less than 1% are deaths as well. So, not a lot of serious cases in that age group. Most of those cases, as we've known, the risk factors increase with age. So, most of the higher risk cases are all up here in this spectrum.
Yeah. So the hospitalization rates over 65 is what I'm seeing, 33% there.
Yeah, 33% of hospitalizations come from that age.
Yeah, you see why it's a real concern for those who are over 65. That is a pretty substantial number. All right, this page can be found on the county's website. We want to remind all of you where you can find that. They just give a really great breakdown, and then it's got some other interesting things on there too. As you're clicking on some of those that are worth diving into. Garrett and I really like this page. I always say I wish it was split after the fourth line there, because for the first 4 lines need to total 100%, but when you're looking at all of it, it can kind of be deceiving. So, have you seen anything change on here, or how do things look?
No, this has been about the same in the last several weeks here, as we've talked about. I know that there was something about 6% coming around a couple weeks ago. I hope we have addressed that. But
yes,
the 83% of deaths that have come from COVID-19 have come from one of two categories: either comorbidity or over 65, and that's about 83% of the deaths. And 86% of the ICU. So that's how you read this chart. You can say 73% of COVID deaths are over 65, but 83% of them have come from either being over 65 or having a comorbidity.
Yeah. So kind of drawing a line right through that chart will separate that for a little better analysis of the data that's on there. What about on the race and ethnicity page? It's kind of hard to see a sway in the numbers or a real trend in the numbers when we've been 6 months in now, isn't it, Garrett? I mean, you'd have to see like a real shift in a number to shift the numbers of the whole pandemic. Yeah,
you would. At this point, there was a time when early on we were seeing some pretty dramatic shifts in this particular number. And this was probably at the very beginning back in, I want to say late June, early July, we were seeing a higher rate of transmission in the Hispanic community, and they overtook the white, or the not Hispanic or Latino, pardon me. They overtook that number at some point, but not a lot of, like I said, once that sort of subsided, and now they're sort of growing in equal proportions. Now you're not seeing a lot of change at this point.
Yeah. So once again, this is all on Maricopa County's website. We don't get a chance to dive in there too often, but it's a really great site for finding more information. And even if you don't live in Maricopa County, obviously with Maricopa being the most populous county here in Arizona, it just gives you kind of a snapshot of how things look other places. Although there are some other counties that have really thorough sites as well. There's been some that you like, Garrett. There's been some.
There's some great sites out there. Let me see if I can sort of who've got the best sites. Probably my second favorite outside of Maricopa County would be either Cochise or Mojave. They have a very see if I can just pull it up. They have a very thorough page. It's map based, so if you live in the area and you recognize where things are, it'll help you sort of get a better idea of what's going on. So let me just go to Cochise, and they use the same dashboard. That's why I said Cochise or Mojave. It's essentially the same site as far as the way the data is aggregated. But this will be like, for example, Cochise, and you can see in Cochise, for example, they actually give an active case count. So we know that there's 42 of these 1854 cases. That county health department says only 42 of them are active. The rest of them are released from isolation, and they're basically said we're cleared. They're medically cleared, and 66 deaths. So here's how the mapping works here. It kind of shows you what things are. You can scroll in. You can, it looks like you can't click on things, but you can at least get you can't click on it. There you go. And it'll give you by zip codes. And then it has the hospitalizations, a couple charts of just how things have gone from the very beginning, and then some other vital information. It's just, again, very useful stuff. So I'm a fan of this particular site.
Yeah, it looks very easy to read, which is always helpful too for people that don't jump on the site every single day.
Yes.
Oh, that's really interesting too.
And this is something that's actually provided by that company Esri. It is the company that actually runs this mapping server, and they actually did this for every county in the country. And gave every county the ability to get this coronavirus impact planning report, which is basically a bunch of insurance information and some other stuff from the census that basically just gives sort of a rundown of the county and its vital statistics and populations by age. It's a great little sheet that it basically gives. Any county in the country has this.
Yeah, this looks familiar to what the Johns Hopkins site is using.
Yes, Johns Hopkins is also using Esri. So they can pull from the same place.
It's just really great to learn about where you live, to just learn a little bit more, and or where you're from, if people are watching from other places as well. It's got fascinating information on there. So you can find that on the Johns Hopkins site. Where were you pulling? Oh, this one was in the county site.
Literally the Cochise County site, but you can get it from the Johns Hopkins University map for any county. You can get it from Maricopa. It doesn't display it on their dashboard, but you just go to the Johns Hopkins site and pick it up.
Yeah, really, really interesting stuff. I highly recommend it for not only where you're living now, where you're from, where you've lived in the past, where you're considering moving, just really insightful stuff on there. Okay, so what are you going to be watching tomorrow? What are your early predictions? Obviously, we're going to be watching the business information and the schools information from all the counties, which we already went over here. But what are some of the other things that you're going to be watching? I'm sure the summary page, because just in case we have a pop in cases that's come late.
Well, tomorrow is the day that we will get mobility index data for Labor Day itself.
Right.
And so far, I have looked already to see what the weekend was like. And the weekend here was not, there hasn't been any substantial jumps in Arizona yet from this last weekend. But tomorrow we get Labor Day. So we'll see what that looks like. We did get a very high spike on Memorial Day this year. We'll see if that actually translates to Labor Day. And then, of course, even if there is a spike or not, it's difficult to see if it's going to correlate with everything else. So we're going to be watching emergency department numbers to see what happens there. And also, just like you said, the summary page. Anything that may have occurred from this weekend, and which, everyone just sort of makes this assumption that if, you have a holiday weekend, a third-party weekend, or a 3-day weekend.
3-day, yes.
Sorry, third-party weekend. A 3-day weekend, that the rate of transmission should go up or could go up. It's at a higher risk to go up at that point. So, you start to say, okay, after 4 days, you might start seeing an increase in growth. And we're expecting to see that anywhere from, Thursday to Saturday at this point. And we'll just keep watching.
So 2 ways that they have talked about tracking this, or that we've relayed to folks in the past. One was through actual mobility with your cell phone, because we don't ever go anywhere anymore without our cell phones. And then also for a credit card usage. Are they still tracking those in the same way, where we were seeing people spending money at restaurants and going out and about, and they were able to see some of that? We have not looked at that since early in the summer. Were they still using some of that data, or have you seen that out there recently?
I have to look again. I think that was a product of MasterCard.
That they put out.
It's something that they have to put up. I don't think there's, for example, what's going on with the mobility index data is that major cell carriers are releasing anonymized data for these major companies and some other places to universities, whatnot, to do these sort of statistics and these indexes to see what mobility is. And then, of course, you have Google and Apple that have their own data that they're releasing as well, because they don't need to be a carrier to release this data. They can just release it as in and of themselves, because they are the operating system owners. So there's just a bunch of this mobility index data that is then aggregated by either universities. I use something called Descartes Labs that does the same thing as these others do. It's just easier to pick up for my software that I use. But and that's how we get it, is through these cell phone data.
Kristen writes, Kristen, you're too funny. She writes, we'll be watching football tomorrow. Exactly. Football is back. No fans in the stands, as we've reported, for the Cardinals here in Arizona for at least the first 2 games, the first 2 home games. And we also were letting you know yesterday that they were letting some fans, the season ticket holders, back into the stands for the Phoenix Rising games. Obviously, a limited number of people there, but we will continue to keep you updated on that too. So sports coming back in small ways. Are you able to answer Kimberly's question?
Yes, I
Kimberly?
can.
Yeah.
Because I've talked to some health, some doctors about this, and what she's asking is that COVID-like illness, which is that surveillance data. I'll bring it up really quick so that everyone can see it as I'm talking about it. This is sort of the syndromic algorithm. I know that's a fancy word that the CDC uses to say, okay, based on someone who writes down or says, I have these symptoms, well, this person is likely a COVID visit because they have X, Y, and Z symptoms, and they came, in the emergency department. And what she's saying is, as you can see, our numbers for these weekly aggregates for the emergency room, which is the red line, continues to drop. But then when you go to our hospital metrics and you look at the ED numbers, you can see that they're dropping, but it's dropping at a slower rate than what it seems to be at the CLI. Well, what you also have to remember is that because CLI is a percentage, what is also occurring very likely is that emergency room visits for other things is starting to pick up. So, that is going to impact this number. If more people are starting to feel more comfortable about going to the emergency room for other reasons, that they may have otherwise not gone to an emergency room before, during the uptick, then that is going to impact this number. And that's likely what's happening in many cases, is that there are certain numbers of people that are more willing to go to the emergency room that weren't otherwise willing to do that like 4, 5, 6 weeks ago.
Yeah. Interesting. That's interesting too, because we hear so much of how many people weren't going to get the care they needed during the height of the pandemic. So Kimberly writes, thank you.
And it should, like influenza is going to impact that, because COVID-like illness and ILI, which is the influenza-like illness, which is the next dashboard, are two different things. So you can see right now the influenza is less than a point right now. No one's going to the emergency room for influenza, but now that we're getting into the season, that might start picking up, but that's not going to affect the CLI number. In fact, it might slightly depress the CLI number, because that just means more people are going to the ED for something else. Yep.
Okay. Lots of good stuff today. Let's see some of the things that we haven't looked at for just a bit that I want to touch on. Some of these models that look ahead, the models that show us how things are, just because a lot of people are feeling like, we're in this lull, we're in this spot, and it feels good. It feels safer. But for how long can we hang on to this? How long will we be here when we see hospital numbers go up either from the flu or from COVID again? What are they predicting at this point, and how do things look? And I know some of the charts will even lay over the probabilities of people continuing to mask, continuing to social distance, putting some of those other things in place to keep people safe. But that's not a guarantee that that'll stay in place. So they've kind of adjusted it if no mitigation measures are taken, and then if some are, and overlaid that on some of those graphs as well.
So I'm going to take us to the Washington model. I know I've already said that I prefer the MIT model, but I know people want to see it go out a little farther, and the IHME model, which has had its issues in the past, but I think just over the course of time and studying the pandemic, they've sort of kind of tempered the model a little bit, and it's not prone to the exaggerations it used to be. And that's one of the reasons I didn't like covering it back then, because it would just all of a sudden one day say, oh, Arizona's going to have 50 billion, hospital cases. And it's like, no, it's not. But it was because their model was just prone to these wild fluctuations, and it just hasn't done that in a while. So that's my explanation to the University of Washington model, which we are looking at right here. So this is the number of deaths that it's projecting. It is projecting that by January 1st, that we should have anywhere from, and the projections are at least very small, at least the range is very small at this point. It does appear that with where we are right now, it thinks anywhere from 87 to 12,300. With masking policies, it does think that it's going to be 7,000 to 8,900, or excuse me, 5,900 to 8,900. So that's sort of what it thinks it's going to be. And its current projection, 67 to 12,300. So 6,700 to 12,300.
And it's not just deaths that this looks at. It looks at cases as well. And then this chart, which is telling, and when the date it starts to pick up again. Right there through, we're just in this little lull right here, and then it starts to slope up again starting in November.
Yeah, which is sort of the traditional start of flu season as well.
Right.
So it's I think right now it does appear that this is sort of following or using math that is aligning the COVID-19 with the flu season at this point, and that's why we're seeing these upticks, because this is a pretty typical uptick for an influenza season, and we'll see if that actually plays out.
Yeah.
And you can see the daily infections are the same way. This is similar to that COVID-19 projections that I like, where it's sort of an agnostic sort of way of looking at it, and it thinks that we could be up to, what is it? Where things 40, what does it think? So right now it thinks about 5,500 right now daily infections, and it thinks that it could get as high as 14,000 in January 1st. But again, that has a lot to do with not just the masking policies, but with what it presumes is going to happen during influenza season.
Yeah, and you look at those two separate numbers, so the green dotted line versus the red, and it's important to keep masking.
Yes. Yeah. This one does definitely. They're using this to say that there is a benefit to continue mask use. That's what this is at least implying.
Yeah. Kimberly writes, hopefully masks and social distancing will reduce the flu too as well. I was thinking the exact same thing, that if it's a bad flu season, I might keep my mask forever and wear it no matter the year, no matter the season, because it is no fun getting that. I get my flu shot actually on Wednesday. I already have it scheduled. So going to go a little bit earlier this year and beat the rush, if you will. All right. We are almost out of time. So we kind of covered what we're going to be tracking tomorrow, what we're going to be watching closely. Obviously, Thursday is a very big day, but one of the headlines that it doesn't look like anybody, as far as the business category, is going to move out of moderate into minimal. So you're still going to see 25% capacity at a lot of places, a lot of gyms specifically, and 50% at restaurants and other places like that. So yeah, Deanna writes, why not mask? Honestly, so easy. It absolutely is. It's the least we could do to get this darn thing under control. All right. Where can you find us? Here's all the information. You can find Garrett on Twitter at Garrett_Archer. I'm on Twitter as well at Katie Raml. A lot of you are watching on Facebook. That's your preferred method. You can find me there at facebook.com/news from Katie. We talked about the numbers coming out of ASU. We, of course, have a reporter on it. We'll have the very latest reporting coming up at 4 on that. We also have newscasts at 5, 6, 6:30, and newly added 9. That's over on the CW 61, and then also back here tonight for 10 p.m. news. And I want to let you know, a lot of people are asking about Dish Network and saying they were only able to catch the COVID updates right here with us because they weren't able to see us on Dish. We're back on Dish now. So that's the good news in all of that as well. All right. We will have much more tomorrow. Same time, same place. You're able to join us then. We'll answer more of your coronavirus related questions, especially as it pertains to Arizona. Be safe out there.